So now that the spring is over, we go back into nitpicking mode and hypothetical mode and all these questions mode because Ohio State's going to go into the summer, have summer workouts, and then in August they'll start fall camp trying to defend their national title. I'm Steven, that's Stefan, and that's Andrew. Stefan, what's the biggest question that you still have about Ohio State going now that the spring is over?
Yeah, shout out to Mick Walker coming to clean up that garbage over there for us. I think the question I have is, and maybe this will steal from some of you, but I got questions about what this team wants to do in the transfer portal now in the spring. And I think the obvious spot is defensive tackle. You need depth. It sounds like even at offensive tackle, if you're not looking for starters, you want to have at least guys. That's one thing that Ryan Day pointed out that I didn't really think of. Like, not only did they lose Josh Simmons, Donovan Jackson, and Josh Fryer this offseason to the NFL draft, you also lost George Fitzpatrick. You lost Zed Mahalski. Like, yeah, sure, you went out and got Ethan Owinyawa and Philip Daniels, but, like, you lost 5 guys and you replaced them with 2. Like, there's some numbers that Ohio State's probably making up for, even though we think their top 4 at offensive tackle is pretty all right. But they're going to have to add there. Quarterback's another interesting one, too. And, no, I'm not talking about Nico Iamaleava. I'm just talking about if there's someone for Ohio State in the portal to get to add to that quarterback room to just be a veteran presence. Lincoln Kienholz is a junior. He's played 1 game of meaningful snaps. Julian Sain's a sophomore. He's only played garbage time. Tavion St. Clair is a true freshman. And then we didn't even see a 4th quarterback in this spring game at all. Like, can Ohio State get someone who can accept that, hey, you're not coming to Ohio State to be competing for a starting job, but you've spent 3 or 4 years at a Power 4 program or maybe even started at a Sun Belt school or something like that, and you've got some experience, come add that to this room. So the spring transfer portal, I think, is kind of interesting for Ohio State. They got to get to that 105, the roster limit that Ryan Day loves to talk about so much. They're going to have to do some work, and I think it's going to be pretty strategic of just plugging and placing in spots where maybe you get to November, you're like, oh, I forgot that guy was on the roster, but behind the scenes it's really valuable to have him. I think they got to do that.
They need a guy who's trying to get his coaching career started to come into that room there. I think that's a really good point.
Kind of like what Billy Fessler was in his playing career, right? He spent a lot of time at Penn State, never really got significant playing time, but, like, look at the trajectory of his career. Is there someone in the transfer portal in 2 weeks that you kind of see is on that trajectory?
Yeah. Andrew, what's your biggest question?
You know, people are talking about the defensive tackle depth, and I think that that's a 100% valid claim. I think we saw once the starting defensive tackles left the field today for Ohio State, there were some questions that we had. I have questions about the upside of this pass rush because I think you look at Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry, and you can be optimistic about them and say, like, well, look at their recruiting rankings, and they were never going to play ahead of JT Tuimoloau or Jack Sawyer, and you could point to all those things, but, like, I don't know how good that unit is going to be. And you throw CJ Hicks into that mix. I think there are some people who are very excited about CJ Hicks. I think we're excited about the idea of CJ Hicks, but there are some people who I think also are validly saying, you got to show it to me at some point. Like, we've been talking about CJ Hicks, exploding onto the scene for a while now, and he just hasn't done that. So is Logan George an option for you in the pass rush? Last year they had an embarrassment of riches at defensive end with Jack and JT, but then you're able to sub Kenyatta and Caden, and Mitchell Melton came in as a pass rusher at times and was kind of a third down pass rush specialist. And we talked about him. He might have the best pass rush moves on the team. Like, we had so many guys to talk about, and we had so many options to talk about for Ohio State's pass rush. And right now, I just look at that and I'm curious, and I think that could be maybe one of the biggest drops from Ohio State's 2024 team to their 2025 team. I think, there's defensive tackle questions. There's going to be a new starting quarterback. There's going to be, questions about this team that you didn't have just because last year's team was so loaded for Ohio State. But the ceiling of this pass rush, I'm still uncertain on. And I'm curious how much of a rush they can get when they rush just 4. So that is going to be something that I'm monitoring into fall camp. And as we get closer to the Texas game, I'm very curious to hear about Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, CJ Hicks, Logan George, Zion Grady, however you want to rank those guys. I'm very curious to hear about how the defensive ends are doing, because Ohio State is going to need to get a pass rush with just 4, and those are going to be the guys that have to do it.
Ryan Day had glowing reviews about Logan George, and I thought he had a really good day today. I'm not really all that worried about defensive. They have to get defensive tackles. They don't have they have 2 guys at a position where Larry Johnson likes to rotate 6, and they have 2 guys. Are not. They have to go. And Ryan Day essentially said, yes, we have to take a look at it. We have to go. They're gonna add people at defensive tackle. They have no choice but to do that. which leads into my thing, though. Or maybe there's a scheme change. They were very vanilla. Ryan Day even said it at the spring game. You essentially saw two coverages. They went one high, too high, because you don't want to show anything. Why? Because Texas is watching. What if they just 3-4? I've been joking about it, but what if they actually do that? Peyton Pierce, you have heard so many good things about Peyton Pierce. What if him and Sonny Styles are just your traditional linebackers? You bet C.J. Hicks, and you have Arvell Reese, and you have Logan George. They're just on the edge as the outside linebackers, and you only play 3-down linemen. And you've got Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, Edric Houston, and Caden McDonald. Now, you still need to go find another defensive tackle. That doesn't change that. But it does change the way you view pass rush. If it's 4-2-5, that's why you're asking that question. If it's 3-4 or 3-3-5, it changes that math. And I am wondering, in a world where they spent the spring game being as vanilla as possible, because of course they did. Every defense in the spring game is going to do that. Are they going to be a 3-4 against Texas? Are we going to see more of that against Texas? Because you weren't going to get answers about scheme from the defense during the spring because they were installing. Ryan Day said a lot of their stuff is installed. I'm excited to get to fall camp to start seeing what some of those things look like, and I'm excited to see them play Texas for them to unleash all of those things. Get to text 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial. $3.99 after that. That's Stefan. That's Andrew. I'm Steven. The spring is over. We're going into the summer, so it's going to be a lot of recruiting news. This guy's going to be busy for the next couple of months here. We'll be busy, but just in a very different way. You'll be seeing a lot more of Andrew. A lot of us, too. So get the text, 614-350-3315, and go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. I'm Steven. That's Stefan. That's Andrew. We're out. See you in August.